I've seen tempers flare on movie sets before. Long hours, creative differences, egos the size of entire cities, it's part of the industry. But nothing prepared me for what happened that day. We were mid-shoot on a high-profile film. Everyone was on edge. The director, a man with a reputation for perfection and very little patience, had been pacing all morning, snapping at anyone who came too close. Then, out of nowhere, he exploded. 1 second Johnny Depp was standing there, calm as ever, just asking a question about a line in the script, and the next, wham! The director hurled the script across the room, right at Johnny's chest. Pages scattered everywhere. People gasped. A production assistant dropped her clipboard. The boom mic operator froze mid-step. No one moved. No one breathed. We all thought Johnny would lose it, shout, walk off, maybe even quit. But what he did instead was something I'll never forget. Not only did it silence the crew, it silenced him. The man who never shut up. And from that moment on, I saw Johnny Depp in a way I never had before. I'm part of the production team, not someone in the spotlight, but close enough to watch everything unfold. I handle logistics, make sure things run smoothly, and sometimes get a front row seat to the real drama behind the cameras. This film was huge. The kind of project everyone talks about for months before it even hits theaters. Big budget, big names, big expectations. But from the very first day, there was tension in the air like a storm about to break. The director, let's just call him Mr. R, was famous for his explosive temper. Everyone on set knew to keep their heads down when he was around. Rumors flew about past incidents, thrown chairs, screaming matches, even someone quitting mid-shoot because of him. You could feel that kind of pressure settle on your shoulders as soon as you stepped on set. And then there was Johnny Depp. If you believe the headlines and gossip, you might expect a wild man, someone difficult to work with, maybe even unpredictable. But the Johnny we saw was nothing like that. He arrived quietly, politely greeting the crew, a soft smile that didn't try to steal attention but somehow did anyway. No flashy entrances, no diva behavior, just a man who knew his craft and carried himself with a calm that stood out sharply against the chaos. Everyone was watching him, curious, skeptical even. People whispered, waiting for a sign that the rumors were true, that he'd snap, or argue, or demand something unreasonable. But day after day, Johnny remained steady, calm, focused. No meltdown came. Instead, he quietly earned respect in ways nobody expected. That contrast, between the director's volatility and Johnny's quiet strength, was what made the tension on set feel like a powder keg, just waiting to explode. As the days went by, the tension on set grew thicker, almost like you could cut it with a knife. Mr. R's frustration was obvious, and it wasn't just little things, it was everything. Every single detail was suddenly wrong. The lighting was too harsh, the extras weren't moving naturally. The background props weren't placed right. Nothing escaped his sharp, critical gaze. It wasn't just that he wanted perfection, it felt like he was looking for reasons to be angry. The crew started walking on eggshells. People whispered in corners, wondering if Mr. R's mood would ever change. Even the actors were affected. Lines were reread endlessly, scenes reshot again and again. The smallest mistake could set him off. And then, subtly but clearly, Johnny became the focus of his irritation. Not openly, at least not at first. Mr. R would pause during a take, shake his head, and mutter something like, "That's not how it's written," or "You don't feel this right." Sometimes, he'd snap at the assistant director to redo a scene because of Johnny's delivery, even when no one else noticed anything wrong. Johnny, though, didn't rise to the bait. He never lost his cool. He listened carefully, adjusted his acting quietly, and kept his expression calm. There was no yelling, no snide remarks, no public temper. It was almost as if he was expecting this. Some of us on set started to wonder, was the director deliberately provoking him? Was this some twisted test, or maybe something personal? No one really knew. No one dared ask. The director's mood became more unpredictable. One moment, he would praise a shot. The next, he'd slam the table and complain about every little thing. His sharp words felt like daggers, slicing through the energy on set. The crew was exhausted. People whispered about how hard it was to work in this environment. But no one wanted to be the first to quit. We all hoped the director would snap out of it, or at least find some peace, but the tension between Johnny and the director was growing. The air between them was thick with unspoken words, a battle of wills neither wanted to lose. And I could tell that something was building, something bigger than just a disagreement over a script or a scene. The question was, when would it break? The day of the breaking point started like any other, but you could feel something was different in the air. The tension that had been simmering beneath the surface was about to boil over. We were rehearsing a scene that, on paper, seemed simple enough, but Mr. Ra was obsessing over a single line, one that Johnny had suggested changing slightly to better fit the character. It was a small change, almost unnoticeable to anyone not paying close attention. The director didn't like it. Not at all. His face darkened as he listened to Johnny's explanation, his eyes narrowing like a storm about to break. What followed was sudden and explosive. "Are you questioning my script?" he snapped, voice sharp enough to cut through the set noise. The crew fell silent. Johnny stayed calm, as always. He simply shook his head and said, "I'm just trying to bring the character to life." That's when it happened. Without warning, the director grabbed the script from the assistant and with a sudden movement, threw it at Johnny. The pages flew through the air, some landing on the floor, others fluttering to the sides. The room froze. You could hear a pin drop. Everyone stared wide-eyed, as the script landed on Johnny's chest. The director's chest heaved with anger, his glare burning holes through Johnny as if daring him to respond. For a heartbeat, no one moved. Some expected Johnny to explode, to yell, to storm off, maybe even quit right then and there. We all held our breath, waiting for the inevitable. But Johnny didn't. He looked down at the scattered pages, then slowly picked up the script. His movements were calm, deliberate. There was no hint of anger or frustration in his eyes, only a quiet strength. I remember my heart pounding so hard, it felt like it would burst through my chest. My hands trembled, and I wanted to look away, but I couldn't. Something about the moment was magnetic, impossible to ignore. Johnny walked over to the director, script in hand. The entire set watched in silence. Even the crew, who had seen so many fights before, were stunned into stillness. Then Johnny spoke. His voice was soft, but every word hit like thunder. It wasn't a shout. It wasn't a threat. It was something far more powerful, a calm, unshakable confidence that silenced the room completely. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. It was like watching a storm calm itself by sheer force of will. I wanted to cheer. I wanted to cry. But all I could do was watch, frozen, amazed, and completely silent. That moment changed everything. The director, the cast, the crew, no one would forget it, and neither would I. Johnny stood there, holding the scattered script in his hands. The whole set was watching, breath caught in their throats, waiting for his reply. You could almost hear the silence pressing down on us like a heavy weight. But Johnny didn't shout. He didn't lash out. Instead, he took a slow, steady breath. Then, with calm eyes that seemed to hold decades of experience, he looked directly at the director. "Mr. R," he began, his voice quiet but clear. "I've been acting for a long time. I've played roles that people said I couldn't do. I've faced rejection, harsh criticism, and more than a few moments where I wanted to give up." He paused, letting the weight of his words settle over the room. "This script," he continued, holding it gently, "is more than just words on paper to me. It's a chance to tell a story that's close to my heart. The character, he's a man who's lost, searching for something real in a world that feels fake." Johnny's eyes softened, but his tone stayed steady. Changing that one line isn't about ego or rebellion. It's about honesty, about respecting the story, and making it truthful. That's what I owe to this role, to the people who will watch this film, and to myself. No one spoke. The air was electric with the sincerity in his words. Even the director, who had been furious moments before, looked as if the wind had been knocked out of him. His angry glare faded into something unreadable, maybe shock, or maybe understanding. Johnny lowered the script, his gaze never leaving Mr. R's. "I'm not here to challenge your vision," he said quietly. "I'm here to bring it to life, but that can only happen if we listen to each other, if we respect each other's truth." The silence stretched longer than any of us expected. Then slowly, the director blinked, looked away, and nodded, almost imperceptibly. It was a powerful moment, the kind you don't see often on a film set or anywhere else. The kind that changes the energy in a room forever. I remember feeling tears prick the corners of my eyes, not because of sadness, but because of the sheer courage it took for Johnny to speak like that, calmly and honestly, in front of everyone. No yelling, no anger, just truth. That day Johnny didn't just respond to a thrown script. He reminded us all what real strength looks like, quiet, steady and full of respect. The set stayed silent for a few more moments, before the director finally spoke, his voice softer than before. "All right, let's try it your way." And just like that, the tension began to melt away. After that intense moment, the set buzzed quietly, with a mix of relief and disbelief. The tension that had gripped us all seemed to loosen, but Johnny didn't join the group celebrating or talking. Instead, he quietly slipped away from the crowd. Later, when I had a moment to myself, I found him sitting alone on a bench near the edge of the set. His eyes were distant, thoughtful, and his usual calm was mixed with something softer, maybe exhaustion, maybe something deeper. I hesitated for a moment, but then walked over and sat beside him. Sometimes, when you see someone in a moment like that, you realize there's so much more beneath the surface than what the world sees. Johnny looked at me and gave a small, tired smile. "It's been a long day," he said quietly. We didn't speak for a while, just sat side by side, watching the crew move in the background, the noise of cameras and voices fading into the distance. Then he began to share something, a story from years ago, long before any of us knew him as the star he is. He told me about a time when he was just starting out. A young actor with big dreams but no one willing to take a chance on him. He spoke of rejection letters, of auditions where he never even got a call back, of feeling invisible, but through all that, he said softly, "I learned that respect for the craft, for the story and for the people you work with, is everything. If you don't have that, none of it matters." He told me how that lesson shaped his approach to every role, every scene, every interaction. How he believes that art isn't just about acting or fame, but about honesty and connection. Listening to him, I realized how wrong the gossip and rumors had been. Johnny wasn't a wild, reckless star. He was a man who carried the weight of his struggles quietly, who fought battles most of us never saw. I felt a deep respect growing inside me, a new understanding of what it means to be truly strong. That day, Johnny didn't just stand his ground on set, he showed me a glimpse into his heart, and it changed everything. The day after that unforgettable confrontation, something unexpected happened. The director, Mr. R, called for a closed-door meeting with the key members of the crew, the producers, the assistant directors, and quietly, Johnny himself. No one knew exactly what was said behind those closed doors. Rumors spread quickly, of course. Some said the director had been confronted by the studio about his behavior. Others whispered that Johnny's words had finally struck a chord with him. Whatever it was clear something had shifted. When filming resumed, the change was impossible to ignore. Mr. R was different. The sharp edge in his voice was gone. Instead of barking orders, he spoke more quietly and thoughtfully. His explosive outbursts were replaced with calm instructions. He seemed more focused, less caught up in petty frustrations. The crew noticed it immediately. The atmosphere on set became lighter, more cooperative. Even the extras who had been nervous around him seemed more relaxed. But most of all, the way everyone looked at Johnny had changed. Before, there had been whispers and sideways glances, a mixture of curiosity and doubt. Now, there was respect, quiet admiration, even. I saw it in the way the assistant director checked in with Johnny before takes. I heard it in the crew's conversations, praising his professionalism and patience. And I felt it in the air whenever Johnny entered the room, like the calm center of a storm. What he had done, standing firm without anger, speaking truth with respect, had left a mark. Even the director who once seemed impossible to approach, was now listening. That moment on set became more than just a story about a thrown script, it became a lesson in grace and strength. A reminder that respect can change even the hardest of hearts. And as someone who witnessed it all from behind the scenes, I can say, it was one of the most powerful things I've ever seen. Looking back, that moment still feels like it changed everything, not just on set, but in how we all saw Johnny Depp, and maybe even ourselves. In a world where shouting often seems louder than speaking, Johnny showed us something rare and powerful: grace under pressure. He didn't need to yell or fight back to make his point. Instead, he stood calm and true, holding his ground with quiet strength. That simple act silenced more than just the director's anger, it silenced doubt, fear and tension for everyone watching. It reminded me that real strength isn't about winning an argument or raising your voice. It's about respect, honesty, and the courage to stay true to yourself, even when the world is against you. That day, Johnny didn't just protect his role or defend his craft, he taught all of us a lesson in dignity and kindness that I'll never forget. And if we could all learn to carry ourselves a little more like that, maybe the world would be a little softer, a little braver, and a lot more respectful. If this story moved you or gave you a new perspective on grace and strength, please like this video, and leave a comment with your thoughts. I'd love to hear what you think. Don't forget to subscribe so you never miss stories that inspire and surprise. And if you know someone who needs a reminder that true power often speaks the softest, please share this video with them. Thank you so much for watching and being part of this journey. Your support means everything.